Colorado's governor delivers the state of the state, balancing criticism and opposition to the incoming Trump administration with praise and collaboration.
Yeah, I think it's very important for any governor of Colorado to have a close working relationship with the federal government.
We're looking at what could go when Colorado makes $1 billion in budget cuts this year. LA firefighters running out of water reminds us of what happened during the Marshall Fire here. Experts in Colorado have advice that can help.
Yeah, it's terrible knowledge to have, to know what that's like.
And one cowboy's personal stock show parade is the most Colorado thing we've seen today. Next. The governor's now calling this place the Free State of Colorado. Said it time and time again in his State of the State address today. But don't mistake that kind of language for just across-the-board resistance to the incoming Trump administration, as some Democrats suggest would be wise. Instead, Governor Polis is clearly picking his battles. He's cozying up to the Trump team on some issues and admitting that his tough talk on other issues is just that, talk. But there were red meat lines for his blue team today.
I refuse to allow disagreement, division, or disorder in Washington, D.C. to deter us in Colorado. There's a big difference between disagreeing on policy and attacking our democratic institutions. In the free state of Colorado, we'll fight against any attempt to rob us of our freedom.
Polis said that Colorado will do what it can at the state level to protect against a further rollback of abortion rights and LGBTQ rights. But he reiterated his support for Trump's plan to deport people who have committed a crime after coming here without authorization. He wants the Trump administration's help with Colorado's plan to import lower-cost prescription drugs from Canada as well, while saying that he opposed Trump's proposed tariffs on Canadian products that just might wipe out any savings from that program. When I sat down with Governor Polis after the State of the State address, I asked him about how he seems to walk the line between Trump curious and Trump resistance. You have said that you do not support the efforts of the incoming Trump administration to separate and deport mixed immigration status families, deport the American children of people who are here without documentation. You can say you don't support it. Is there anything you can do about it?
Well, look, first, I want to focus on areas where we welcome help from the next administration. Number one, and I said this in my speech, I hope that they succeed just as I hope President Biden succeeded in securing the border, preventing the illegal flow of people, of drugs, of guns into our country. I also hope that they can provide more assistance with criminal investigations into whether it's people who commit crimes who are American-born citizens or people who commit crimes who've been here 5 years or a week. We don't distinguish. We want to apprehend and hold criminals accountable. At the same time, it's very important to recognize that there are many immigrants that are law-abiding Coloradans, important part of our communities, have American kids, and yes, we want to make sure that that is not the target of the next administration, and certainly they won't get information from the state that somehow helps them go after law-abiding Colorado families.
There are some Democratic governors who are lining up in staunch opposition to the Trump administration, whereas you've been eager, it seems, to find common ground. You praised Trump's pick of the anti-vaccine activist RFK Jr. to lead on health policy. You cheered the idea of Greenland joining the United States. You've been pitching your cost savings ideas to the billionaires that Trump has put in charge of cutting spending. Question: if you're looking to build a national profile for yourself, I see how this stuff gets headlines. But how does cozying up to the Trump team benefit Coloradans?
I think it's very important for any governor of Colorado to have a close working relationship with the federal government. Colorado is proud to be a state. We're one of 50 states and the greatest, freest nation on earth. And we rely on the federal government, whether it's for investment in our highways, whether it's cooperation on criminal law enforcement, whether it's for making college affordable through Pell Grants and student loans. So having a good relationship with whoever gets elected nationally is an important part of the job description for governor.
On other issues, Governor Polis told me that he opposes fellow Democrats who want to remove a second vote needed for unions to collect dues in our state. And I asked him whether his mantra about saving Coloradans money should include shrinking the size and scope of state government. I would describe his response on that question as respectfully evasive. Our conversation was limited to 10 minutes, but you can see the full, unedited interview on the 9 News YouTube channel. So Colorado's kind of like microdosing snow this week. We got a little Monday into Tuesday, got a little more today, made for some rough driving out east. I-70 was closed, walk-ins to the Kansas state line for most of the day. That reopened about an hour ago. The The Doco County Sheriff's Office said at one point I-25 looked like a parking lot, all that slow moving and stopped traffic. Let's talk to meteorologist Corey Reppenhagen about where things go from here.
Yeah, you know, we get sunshine tomorrow, so a completely different story. We'll still be a little bit cooler than the normal temperatures here. We'll have a little bit of a cool north breeze that will persist, keeping these temperatures just a little bit below normal. And then we'll watch for our next system, which is coming tomorrow night. Here we are on Futurecast at 11 o'clock tomorrow night. That's when the winter weather advisories go in for the northern Colorado mountains. And as we put this into motion, you can see that develop overnight into the morning on Saturday. So if you're heading up to Colorado ski country here on Saturday morning, you're going to encounter some snow showers on just about all the mountain passes. Down here on the eastern plains, we'll be looking for some freezing fog and some freezing drizzle to be impactful in the mornings. And then later on Saturday afternoon, we'll have a wave of showers in the Denver area. I don't expect too much of this snow to actually stick during the daytime hours. And some of the snow should still be there by Saturday night, Sunday morning. The totals here in the mountains looking pretty decent, 4 to 8 in the mountain towns and some of the mountain passes. And when you look at your 7-day forecast here, it looks like we're going to stay relatively sunny and mild through the week all the way until Friday. Kyle?
Fire departments in Los Angeles are running out of water as they battle a series of urban wildfires happening now. It's a situation that firefighters here nearly found themselves in during the Marshall Fire, if not for some quick thinking. Our Evan Krugel shows us how water utilities in California may turn to lessons learned in Colorado.
Lesson 101 when working at a water treatment plant is to keep the supply clean.
Yeah, to treat the water, make sure it's safe for consumption.
But Greg Vanette threw those rules out the window as the Marshall Fire tore through Boulder County and hydrants started drying up.
We decided that we needed to get water into the system as quickly as possible, so that's when we opened up the valves from our reservoirs and let that untreated water through into the system to supply water to the firefighters.
That decision to use untreated water likely saved countless homes, but it left the city of Louisville in a difficult spot when it came time to clean the system and turn the water back on.
So a lot of it was just long hours, a lot of teamwork, a lot of help from outside communities and partners.
Greg says it took months to fully clean the system, and there was no manual on how to do it.
Not at that time, no.
So Louisville helped create one.
So this manual that we created from the Marshall Fire just actually got published late last year and is now like the first national guide on how to recover your system from a fire.
Kurt Kowar says that manual, which details how to bring a water system back online after a fire, is now being used by water providers in Southern California as they battle a series of urban fires that have a lot in common with the Marshall Fire.
Yeah, it's quite a full circle moment. You know, our goals were to recover ourselves and help other people in the future. We feel like we accomplished that.
Greg says it's tough to see this happening to another community, but hopes the lessons learned from a Colorado tragedy can help another state heal.
Yeah, it's terrible knowledge to have, to know what that's like. And when you see those pictures, you remember what it smells like, what it feels like to be in the middle of that. It's comforting to know that every bit of knowledge that we have, we share with other people. We pay it forward.
Louisville is also working to replace natural gas-powered generators at those water treatment plants with diesel-powered generators to ensure those don't go down again during any future situations like a Marshall Fire. Kyle, these are lessons that were so difficult to learn, but are now proving invaluable for other communities dealing with similar tragedy.
Without question, Evan, I just think so many Coloradans, right, saw the neighborhoods after the Marshall Fire, and your initial reaction was like, I've never seen anything like this before. And we see those scenes out of LA, and our first reaction is, oh yeah, we've seen that. Yeah, we know what that is.
We've seen it before. We've seen these communities recover from it before. That's something those communities will soon be dealing with in California. Hopefully they can use this knowledge to help them on that path.
Evan Krugel, thank you for your work.
It's not like your home budget where you have the entertainment budget and you can just not go to the Dave Matthews concert and save $1 billion.
Colorado's legislators need to find $1 billion in the state's couch cushions or get cutting expenses. And wildlife workers hope that ranchers are going to appreciate their new rules for dealing with particularly hungry wolves. Next. If the state of Colorado just does a copy-paste on last year's budget, the same programs would cost $700 million more this year. And yet, on top of that, a voter approved $350 million in spending for public safety, and now the state's Joint Budget Committee has to find $1 billion to cut from somewhere. Our Marshall Zellinger went to find out what programs are safe and what might go away.
There's going to be some really painful cuts. And there's no way to do that in a way that doesn't cause some kind of impact to folks across the state. And that's heartbreaking, but that is the job that we have.
Just not to K-12 education. Democratic State Senator Jeff Bridges and Republican State Senator Barb Kirkmeyer both say their work on the Joint Budget Committee will make K-12 funding the last to be touched. Last year, for the first time in decades, school districts received required state funding without any dollars held back.
Will that continue this year? Will the state fully fund education?
Yes, fully fund education as required under the Constitution.
The debate about K-12 funding is how students are counted. Districts can receive funding based on current student enrollment or an average of the last 2, 3, or 4 years, whichever number is higher. If a prior year average is used, it's known as providing money for phantom kids.
If I personally have to choose between funding kids that don't exist and fully funding the kids who do, I'm going to choose the kids who actually exist every time.
Don't get me wrong. I agree with what Senator Bridges was speaking to about that we shouldn't be funding children who aren't there in the school systems. But that's not the role of the Joint Budget Committee.
Kirkmeyer believes lawmakers across the street should figure out the funding equation so the Joint Budget Committee can make cuts based on that decision. A separate education topic is funding universal preschool, which voters approved in 2020.
The ballot initiative was to pay for 10 hours of preschool.
But Colorado currently funds 15 hours, a half day, for all 4-year-olds.
I think universal pre-K is a phenomenal benefit to our state in so many different ways, and I do not want to see that program cut.
So what does get cut? Where does the state find $1 billion in services to stop providing? Bridges gave one small example.
The Colorado Energy Office has a program where they spend about $500,000 a year helping marijuana grow centers become more energy efficient. Right? That's nice, but it's not a need to have. This is a really great example of a program that will be gone, and that's $500,000. But there's not another 1,999 of these programs to get to $1 billion.
About 1/3 of the state's budget is K-12. A third is Medicaid, 15% prisons and higher ed, and then smaller amounts for courts, public safety, public health. It really is the responsibility of 6 lawmakers, but really their staff, led by a director whose name is Craig Harper, who simplify the budget requests from each of those departments, the impacts those requests have, Kyle, and then the savings that would result from those requests.
I was trying to follow the numbers there. Medicaid's the big bucket.
It really is. I think it's slightly more than K-12. And so we've done stories here about there are mental health providers that are leaving the system because they don't get enough reimbursement. So the JBC, the Joint Budget Committee, has to figure out, do we raise the reimbursement, which means more money, which means you're cutting somewhere else. I learned today that Colorado allows almost twice as many people to receive Medicaid. Do you start to pare that down from who can qualify? And it really is a dance that nobody wants to do, but these 6 lawmakers get to do it.
Yeah, it's real consequences for real people. And that's why we're going to spend a lot of time talking about it. Marshall Zellinger, thank you. Wildlife management leaders are not going to halt the controversial wolf releases. It does appear they are ready to strike a different compromise with ranchers. Hey, a reminder, you can catch Next streaming each weeknight, 6 p.m. on 9 News Plus. And Next is also a podcast each weeknight. Find us wherever you get stuff for your ears. Colorado Parks and Wildlife is considering a compromise in the state's wolf reintroduction program, a new way to deal with the wolves that have a particular history of repeatedly attacking livestock. Colorado's gray wolves are federally protected under the Endangered Species Act, but there's an exception for killing wolves involved in quote-unquote chronic depredation. That's a chewy term, and it's one that does not have an official state definition, because once the term is defined by the state, then wolves can be killed for chronic depredation. This new proposal would define chronic depredation as 3 or more events, meaning livestock kills, by wolves in 30 days with clear and convincing evidence that at least one of those attacks was caused by that particular wolf. Even then, ranchers would have to try several non-lethal techniques first before state workers would then step in to move or kill the wolf. Several livestock and ranching associations had asked this month's scheduled wolf release be postponed until there are firm rules in place on chronic depredation. CPW rejected that request last night. They said the wolf releases will continue as planned. So Coloradans are certainly used to just shrugging off a little bit of snow, right? Most of the time sun comes out, it's gone tomorrow. But even with that sun, meteorologist Chris Bianchi wants to warn you, side streets, sidewalks will be skating rinks for a bit.
Well, if you love snowy and icy side streets, and who doesn't, you're going to love the next couple of weeks. Of course, we are in January, which means that we have typically the lowest sun angle of the year. Of course, maybe about the same as December's, but for all intents and purposes, our sun angle this time of year, very low, which means especially those north-facing sidewalks and yards are going to stay icy and snowy as we head over the next few days, not just because of the sun angle, but of course, those temperatures are going to stay on the cold side for really the foreseeable future. We're going to struggle to hit freezing as we head over the next few days, and that means those icy side streets are going to stay, you guessed it, icy and snow covered. So until we get some help from good old SOL, the sun, we're not going to get much in the way of help as we head over the next few days. And that means those icy sidewalks and streets will stay that way.
Love that Bianchi referenced Seoul. That, of course, Denver's way to clear the streets. Marilyn, thank you. She got the little hat on because it's cold out. They don't let me wear a hat even if I want. Back with your feedback next.
Greetings, citizens of Denver. You may have noticed it snowed days ago, and the side streets have not been plowed. They're messy, icy, bumpy, and rutted, and they're going to stay that way because you are SOL. Soul, the City of Denver's innovative snow clearing program. Soul harnesses the natural and free power of the sun to melt away the snow instead of plowing. Sure, that might take weeks, and yes, shady streets could be icy for months. Drivers will just have to deal with it. Pedestrians and cyclists are completely SOL. Soul. Because why should the city clear the streets when the sun will eventually do it? Citizens of Denver, together, we are all SOL. I mean, Soul.
The most Colorado thing we saw today is the city gone country. 119th National Western Stock Show is officially underway. The parade, delayed by the snow and cold, went off without its signature Longhorns leading the way. They couldn't make it into the city because of the weather. That was only the second most Colorado thing we saw today, because there's something just quintessentially Colorado about seeing a cowboy atop his trusty steed, riding off into the sunset or scooting down the sidewalk on a lime scooter with the boots and the hat, the can of Banquet slipped into the back pocket of the jeans. That is a Colorado scene, my friends. You know it's time for the stock show. Finish with your feedback. Kurt writes in to say, I wonder why it was so important for the governor to give his speech today. Thought it'd be more respectful to postpone it in honor of former President Jimmy Carter's funeral proceedings. I don't know. I didn't hear anybody else express that sentiment. I think, Jimmy Carter, of all people, would understand that the business of serving people in the government just kind of goes on. But I hear what you're saying, Kurt. Tom says, how is it that the state can send out refunds one year, then need to cut the budget the next year? That's an insane way to run a state. Let's get rid of Tabor, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. Tom, there's probably some Democrats who agree with you on that, but the governor has said he's not interested in touching those aspects of Tabor, and Republicans want to preserve it. Richard Cashdollar says, longtime 9 News listener, I find myself switching to another station anytime Kyle Clark is on. In my opinion, he's terrible. Regards. First off, amazing name, Rich Cashdollar. Second, thank you for your courtesy. And third, hope you enjoyed the 6.5 hours of 9 News without me.